What's going on, everyone? It is the Derv, and in today's video I'm going to go through step by step how to set your Titan up so that you can feel a little bit more confident when jumping into PvP. I did a Warlock video some time ago and a lot of you commented that you'd like to see the Titan version, so this is the video for you. If you are a Titan lover, or you are a Titan main, or maybe you're just looking to maybe spec into Titan because you've never really played, this will help you set your Titan up for PvP. Titans have kind of fallen off in terms of what the season has done for other classes, specifically Warlocks. So I'm going to break it down: supers, abilities, aspects, fragments, armor stat distribution, weapons you can pick up, exotic armors, and even a kind of a granular build that you can kind of spec into and change as your journey through PvP continues. So if you find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Titan out there or someone out there who's looking to spec into Titan and this will help them, please consider sharing with them or send them my way. My goal is to help as many people as possible. So let's get it going. Everything Titan and PvP. Here we go. To get us started on improving our Titan for PvP, we need to go over supers. Personally, for me, the supers that work best are Blade Fury, Hammer of Soul, and Glacial Quake. The reason these three work the best is because they are roaming supers, which means just causing damage with your weapons will help regenerate your super faster. If you want a more potent super that is kind of a one-shot kill, you can throw on Thunder Crash, but remember, it's going to take you longer to build it up. Same thing with Twilight Arsenal. Neither of those are roaming supers. So for me, personally, I like roaming around the battlefield with Blade Fury, and if you're not a PvP main and you're just looking for something where you don't necessarily have to slow down, you don't have to aim like with Hammer of Soul, and with Glacial Quake it only goes out so far, which means you have to be up close, which might not be ideal for you because you're not going to be moving as fast as if you have Blade Fury. Then Blade Fury is probably your best bet. Next up, we got to talk about abilities. The most sensible ability is probably going to be either the Rally Barricade or the Towering Barricade. Either one of these is going to provide you a little bit of cover, and depending on if you have certain aspects equipped, which we'll go over next, either one of these barricades will synergize with any aspects and or exotic armor you might prefer that will cause your barricade to do different things. The Strafe Lift is the no-brainer move here. You can move much faster around the battlefield than if you have the Catapult Lift or the High Lift. For the melee, there's going to be probably two, maybe three major options for those of us, or those of you watching this video, I should say, who don't play a lot of PvP. The most obvious is going to be Frenzied Blade. Much like Arcane Needle with the Warlock, Frenzied Blade can stack multiple times. However, Frenzied Blade is not just an automatic one-punch kill. So you kind of have to be a little bit more conscious of using your melee at the right times. Me personally, I like to use the melee to get a finalized kill on an enemy who might not have their full shield and their full health bar. Someone that maybe I whittled away their health, they duck behind some cover, I run up, I hit the melee, because quite honestly, a melee will do chunk damage as opposed to them possibly getting the jump on me with their weapons. Other two options that I think are very good in PvP, the Shiver Strike, however you pronounce it. When you leap through the air, you unleash an attack that attaches a delayed stasis explosive to them. Now, this does take a little bit more coordination, so again, if you're not necessarily an aggressive PvP player, this might not be the one for you. If you want to be at a safe distance, virtually as many times in a PvP match as possible, the shield throw is the absolute way to go. You can chuck your shield from a safe distance away, duck behind cover. Hopefully your shield hits one of the targets you're throwing it at. If it does, it may ricochet to others And if not, it'll definitely work. It will definitely ricochet off of surfaces that might in turn hit other targets as well. So you might get lucky. That's kind of a gamble. Again, if you're not very aggressive in PvP, having melee options like these three all of them might seem daunting, but the Frenzy Blade makes the most sense because if you play a lot of control, chances are you're going to be going towards the same points as, the enemies. So let's talk about the grenade right now. Grenade is probably going to be the thing that you experiment most with in your entire build. And I realize saying that, knowing that we haven't talked about aspects, we haven't talked about fragments, weapons, or any of that nonsense. Your grenade, if you are not comfortable in PvP, is going to be something that you can rely on to safely come back to you, and it's going to be quicker than any melee. So the reason that that's important is your grenade can be used from a distance. It can cause some tick damage. You chuck your grenade, boom, it's out. You pull your weapon back out, you start firing. So the thing that you got to think about with your grenade is, what are you trying to accomplish with your grenade? Me personally, I want to hit an enemy with my grenade, and I want to get the jump on them. The best grenade for that is going to be the shackle grenade, because when you're suspended, you can't zoom in on your weapon, which means any enemy or enemies that get suspended by the shackle grenade means I can pull out my 720 RPM auto rifle and mow them down before the suspension stops. But then I might not be used, so let's talk about these other ones. The suppressor grenade, I'm not going to say that this is really a useless grenade, but you're going to get less usage out of this than any of them. And the reason being is you need to be accurate, or, there's not really, it's like shooting a BB compared to the other grenades at other Guardians. It just is. Might work great against PvE combatants, especially Overload champs. There are no Overload champs inside PvP. So you have to think kind of beyond what the grenade is used for, and think about it in terms of, I'm going against someone who's got just as much health as me. What's going to annoy them the most? Well, the shackle grenade's pretty annoying. Suppressor grenade, probably not so much. Thermite grenade is nice if you're playing control. You chuck it at like the B objective and there's maybe a couple guardians there. It will scorch them, but again, you're not going to be killing them, and you're certainly not going to be stunning them like you would unstoppable champs. The pulse grenade is going to be your most powerful out of all 5 grenades. It's going to do the most damage, but again, you have to be accurate with when you throw it. Well, you can put on mods like Fastball on your gauntlets so that you can chuck this thing further, but again, the further you are away, the less accurate you are possibly with hitting your target anyways. So the pulse grenade might be a good option, or it might not. The glacier grenade is an interesting option here. While it technically doesn't cause any direct damage, you can shatter the crystals and cause some freezing damage. Another thing that I like to use the glacial grenade for, and I go back and forth on this, is if I want to section off a doorway, PvP plays different, okay? If you get blocked from a doorway in PvE, which I can't even really think of a situation where that even happens. Enemies just don't do that. But let's just say they do. Your natural reaction as a Guardian, who is, of course, going after the enemies of the Traveler, is to hop that barrier and just start going to town. Well, in PvP, it's a little bit different. Guardians don't just do, some do. Some just have a death wish. But if you chuck this thing down in a hallway, for example, and you block up that hallway, Guardians are more apt to shoot through the wall of stasis first before ever thinking about jumping over the top. Which means if you chuck this down when you're trying to secure a capture point in Control, for example, or Iron Banner, which again is pretty much the same thing, you can throw this down in a hallway, and then you can turn your line of sight to maybe another entry point that you are worried that someone might be coming by. You can buy yourself 3, 4, 5 seconds, and that might be all you need to secure that point if you've got a buddy on that point with you. So the Glacier Grenade is going to be a grenade that you could benefit from, and more importantly, irritate Guardians with. You won't cause any direct damage, but if some of them are goofy enough to try to jump over it, you can always just shoot the wall, and boom, now you got some shatter damage on that Guardian. And oh, by the way, you're probably still full on trigger pull. You adjust your fire straight to that Guardian after you shoot the wall of crystals, and boom, they're dead in one shot. Maybe not quite as fast as that sounding, but I mean, you'll know that Guardians don't just run into all of the kill zones, which means if there's a chance that there could be a line of sight on a specific area, Guardians will be a little bit more gingerly about entering that. Well, if you got a wall of crystals and the only way to go is up, they know you're aiming above the wall of crystals on purpose. So the chances of them jumping over and actually hitting the ground before they're dead is pretty slim, especially if you got a buddy with them. Yeah, one shot from each of you, they're dead. Or one, burst from a couple of pulse rifles and they're dead. So yeah, the Glacier Grenade will irritate some, and if you use it right, it can save you in a gun battle to where you maybe can, hopefully finish whatever you're trying to do, or finish off that Guardian, or maybe you're getting chased down. You want to buy yourself some time. That's a great way to, because again, they will hesitate for a sec, and if you're trying to retreat back to your buddies, or you're trying to go get some special ammo or heavy ammo, the Glacier Grenade can be pretty darn helpful because it just irritates other Guardians, and that's kind of why I like it. But my personal pick is going to be the Shackle Grenade. You don't have to be super accurate. Remember, it splits off and it creates additional suspending sub-projections. If you hit any Guardian with those, you got them stuck in the air, and you have a chance to just get an easy kill. Next, we need to talk about aspects. Before you equip any aspects, you have to ask yourself probably two questions. The first one being, am I going to use these aspects? The second one is being, am I going to spec into these aspects? And there's two differences with these. Aspects give you a couple of things. One of them being fragment slots, and then the other one being power. So the question that both of those kind of lean towards is, are you leaning more into being able to have as many fragments as possible, or do you want to be able to take advantage of additional power that these aspects give you? There is a way to blend both, but I'll go through the different schools of thought. The first is, if you want to just max out your fragment slots, you can equip Dranger's Lash, and you can equip Diamond Lance, and you will get 6 fragment slots. That is a popular way to go if you're just looking to maximize your fragments. It's true, you may want to spec into Stasis if you put on Diamond Lance, but hey, some people might put on Diamond Lance and just choose to take the extra fragment slot and go with whatever weapon they like. There technically isn't really a wrong way to do it, but I think you can do it a little bit better than just saying, well, I just want as many stat boosts as possible. Well, stat boost doesn't necessarily mean the character is going to function any better. So if you have one less fragment, the school of thought that I encourage you to think about is, am I really going to be fundamentally changed or different in my ability to survive or deal damage in Crucible or Trials of Osiris, for example, if I have one less fragment slot? For 99% of you, I would say probably not. The 1% are those that are, getting to the lighthouse every week, or, doing trials carries, or getting to the top echelon of comp matches. For the rest of you who may not be PvP mains or may not really play it enough to really get to those levels, you get the loot, maybe you have some fun with your buddies or your clan, and then you move on. It wouldn't necessarily hurt you to maximize your fragment slots, because you're not really in it long enough to really benefit one way or the other from not using something like Diamond Lance. However, the blend here, in my opinion, would probably be Knockout and Dranger's Lash. Dranger's Lash is popular because, number one, it's got 3 fragment slots, but if you don't know, the suspend that gets cast out from your barricade does have some minor tracking to your enemy, which means if they are backing away and they go around the corner, you have a shot. And it's happened multiple times for me just even this week, just kind of goofing around, where the suspend will catch up to them, and then you can literally just walk right up to them and punch them to death or shoot them from a distance, and they can't shoot you that accurately when they're suspended. So that's a good one to put on. I think everyone should put Dranger's Lash on. The other one that makes a lot of sense is Knockout. Now, you'll remember from previous builds when the final shape came out and those things. Knockout stays active with any melee kill while you're in prismatic. So if you do get the jump on someone and you use your melee to kill them, you will then have knockout fully activated, which means you will deal increased melee range and damage for a short time, which means theoretically you could punch out 2 guardians, possibly even 3, because knockout will stay active as you get melee kills. So that might be appealing to those who might be a little bit of afraid to even use their melee because they're like, well, it takes so long for me to get my melee back because I'm not spec'd into this or that. I just play casually. Trust me, I get that. So knockout would be kind of the happy medium, and you're not really going to miss out on that 3rd fragment slot. The other one that makes probably a little bit of sense is going to be Unbreakable. Unbreakable also has 3 fragment slots. However, there is some coordination to this that you would have to consider. You remember, you have to hold to summon that Void Shield. You draw the hostile fire and it blocks a portion of incoming damage. Gradually, it drains your grenade energy. So you have to have a pretty decent grenade stat to get your grenade back so that you can use this somewhat frequently. This is especially useful in control if you're more of a support player and not really much of an attacker. Once you release the grenade input, it releases a frontal blast from your shield that deals increased damage based on how much damage was blocked. Here's the downside of this. If there's no enemies in front of you, this is a waste of an aspect. Because if you literally just let this thing loose every time, I mean, okay, maybe a waste of an aspect might not be completely accurate because there's some people on this watching this video that are probably going to be like, well, Durf, you did your job. You protected your teammates. You guys got the point in control. Or the capture point and, wherever activity, the Iron Banner, it doesn't really matter. You did your job, you supported your teammates, you protected them from incoming fire, and you guys secured the spot. Okay, in that respect, yes. But you miss out on half of it. 100% of the time if there's never an enemy in front of you. At least with Knockout, for example, let's say you get the jump on that first Guardian and you kill them, and then, the other guardian might be fending off against somebody else from another direction. Well, you can quickly pop over to them, couple of punches, boom, they're dead too. Knockout can be much more useful, and it also makes you amplified, which means it restores a portion of your health, and you get to race around the battlefield until you let off of the sprint button. The most useless one in PvP, in my opinion, is going to be Consecration. Consecration, of course, was all the rage 2 seasons ago, even a little bit last season. But the problem with Consecration, not only does it only have 2 fragment slots, you can't really benefit from Consecration unless there's multiple targets in the wave of your Consecration slam. Much like in PvE, if you only are using Consecration on one target, it's going to be basically a waste of your melee, and you're going to leap in the air, and basically the Guardian that you're trying to knock out with this, no pun intended, knock out with this Consecration, it's going to be like shooting a BB at them. They're going to kill you before you're even able to activate a second one. That's not to say you can't take out multiple Guardians with Consecration, but the likelihood that 2 Guardians are just going to be standing there dumbfounded that you are using your Consecration and not pull the trigger, both of them on you while you're doing this, is pretty low. So your chances of even causing an ignition is probably smaller than literally anything else in the aspect slot. So when you're making your choices between these aspects, make sure you have an idea, like, okay, maybe I won't spec into strand weapons, maybe I won't spec into stasis weapons, but I'm using this or I'm using that so that I can get extra fragment slots. Okay, I can follow your logic on that. If you're just like, well, I love Consecration, it works great in PvE, so I'm going to put Consecration on in PvP. Look, it's not going to work the same. So don't break your own heart by thinking that PvP and PvE really are similar at all. 2 totally different playstyles, 2 totally different amounts of enemies. There's not as much chaos in PvP. It's more gun battle, so you do what's best for you when it's a one-on-one. because consecration is not going to help you win one-on-one. I promise you. So now we get to talk about fragments. I will tell you right now, my personal opinion, fragments that deal with multi-kills are going to be pretty much completely pointless in most PvP activities. Mainly because those that are watching this video looking for ways to improve their Titan, we're not getting multiple kills on such a regular basis that's going to fundamentally change our build like it would in PvE. In PvE, enemies come to you. They follow you, they track you, they attack you, they swarm you. In PvP, you do have some of that, but the max amount of enemies you ever have around yourself at one point is 6, and I can promise you, you're not going to have 6 enemies in PvP ever surrounding you. Maybe 2, maybe 3 at most. You kill both of them, okay, congratulations, you got a multi-kill. Now you got to go run a football field away before you even see another enemy. So all the buff that you just got is going to wear off. So buffs like, where are we going here? For example, Facet of Justice. Your ability final blows explode. That's great if you can get a kill with Transcendence. What is the point of having your abilities explode when you're just going after one person? So again, you might get a +10 to super, but that's going to be something useless. Same thing here with Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits make you radiant. Okay, great. Yes, you're radiant. Now go find that second enemy after you just finished off that first enemy and tell me that your radiant is still procced. Again, not that it's useless, but there's very few situations where everyone's just going to be grouped together. Same thing with this. However, the only reason I've got this on is to put a bump to my health. If your health is high enough, you can take Facet of Awakening off and literally put anything else on. One of the ones you could put on if you have high enough health would be Facet of Grace if you're using Kinetic Energy weapon. But for the vast majority of people, like this one right here, Facet of Balance, you get no stat bump and you have to be rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage to get your melee bump, to get your grenade bump. Something like this is going to be kind of, like I said, I don't want to use the word useless because, again, once you get used to PvP, there's going to be situations where Facet of Balance might actually help you. But in the grand scheme of things, if you are not, if you're not hunting that top tier in PvP, if you're not the kind of person who wants to sweat during a trials weekend, you might get in, get some loot, get out, you do okay, but you're not blowing the doors off of any match. You're not going to be taking any of these fragments that don't give you a stat boost or require multiple kills or something ridiculous here like grenade final blows cure you. Again, it's not ridiculous, but think about it. Titans, your job is to just, smash and grab basically. You're in most Guardians' face, but for those Titans out there who don't really play PvP, it's going to come more down to gunplay. So things like Facet of Dominance, things like Facet of Blessing, Facet of Purpose, you're not going to benefit from any one of those because you're never really going to get the benefit from it like you would in PvE. So when you're picking your fragments out, and I know I've just kind of gone all over the place with my opinions on fragments, one, it's going to be determined by how many fragments you have to pick from. So my recommendation for those who don't play PvP regularly, pick fragments that if you can get them to synergize with some semblance of your weapons and or armor or whatever, great. Otherwise, go just based on the stat boost. I know that sounds like a newbie way of talking, but our goal here is to improve in PvP and at least give ourselves a chance to set ourselves up to be somewhat viable. Maybe you're not going to finish 1 or 2 in every match. Heck, I don't finish 1 or 2 in every match. Sometimes I just have a bad match. Well, after that bad match, you have to decide if you want to even keep playing. If you get your loot in that bad match because you're just doing it for the bonus focus, then you might not even care. You use your PvP loadout once or twice a day, and then you do it the next day. Trust me, I get that. So just take the stat boost because you're not going to be in there long enough to really handle, a a straight up power build where you're going to be synergizing all these little things together to try to get yourself, to that top tier in trials, for example. Plus, most of, the casual PvP players, we go in there, we do our best, we maybe get on a couple of rolls and then we're done, so stick with what will help you constantly. What will help you constantly? A +10 to weapon. You don't have to do anything to proc it. You don't have to do anything to activate it. You don't have to get multiple kills. It's just there. That's going to be my philosophy, especially for those who are kind of nervous to get into PvP. Give yourself the stat boost that you need, okay? That's got to be goal number one. Get your stats where you can kind of meander through. And then use that as what you base your fragments on. Just to start, once you see how you fare in PvP and maybe you start playing more of it, then you can kind of tinker with it and you'll know when you're missing out on something. 5-10 games in, you're going to know, hey, I'm always missing this. That's when you come back to the fragments and go, okay, what can I use for my fragments to maybe get me that? You'll have a good understanding, trust me. 5 in a row, 10 in a row, you'll know exactly where you're missing or what you're missing or what you feel like you could use more of or less of. Your fragments, then you can play around with them, and then in turn, you can play around with your armor. So since I mentioned armor multiple times when talking about fragments, let's just talk about it somewhat quick. The number one stat you're going to have to spec into when it comes to armor is weapons. Number 2 is going to be health. Kind of. And number 3, if you're a Titan, is probably going to be either grenade or super or maybe a healthy combination of both. So the reason why I say health is a maybe. If you are not an aggressive PvP player, chances are you are running around the edges of the battlefield and aiming inward, which means the likelihood of you getting into a gun battle back to back is pretty low. So for me personally, and I know I did get some flack when I made the Warlock version of this, Durf, your health stat has to be higher. Okay, I can get my head around that. How does that apply to me unless I'm being extremely aggressive? If that's you, if you're me in that mindset where, hey, I'm going to play some control. I'm going to go for A and C because I know that there's usually a massive battle going down at B at every single, match of control that there is. Then chances are you might see one enemy on your traversal to C and then back to A. If you go to B, you're going to see the whole team there practically, or at least 5/6 of the team shooting at you. That might be a good time to have your health at least 100. But the way that Bungie set this up, and I have done enough looking around and reading complaints of people that can't figure out how to spec into their Titan, or even just their stats in general in PvP, but specifically Titan, because Titan is, you're supposed to be the fist of the fight. You're supposed to be up close in the enemy's faces. That's what a Titan does. They lead the charge. The problem is that the way that Bungie has it set up with the armor archetypes, and we can talk about that in the comments if you want, you cannot build a Titan having your cake and eat it too. In other words, your gunner archetype is only going to give you weapons and grenade for the first 2 stats, which means your best case scenario is the tertiary stat is always in health. Well, if you do that for all 5 pieces of armor, which essentially you're going to have is you're going to have 100 in health, you're going to have like 125 in grenade, and then you're going to have 150 in weapons in a perfect tier 5 75 stat roll of weapons, grenade, and health. That's going to leave you pretty strapped for casting your class ability, which, as we've already talked about, you kind of want to spec into that at least a little bit with your aspects that you selected. And you also don't want to have wimpy super regen time. Now, I'm not saying you got to spec it all the way up to 70 if you don't want to, or certainly a 100, but you have to have a healthy balance of this. So I don't want to rag on the health stat. But for the general purpose of PvP, for what we're trying to do, which is improve our gameplay, which is improve giving ourselves a fighting chance to do one-on-one gun battles, giving ourselves a fighting chance with stats, giving ourselves a fighting chance by setting up our abilities to kind of suit our needs, this is going to be probably your throwaway stat. And before you light me up in the comments, just understand we're not trying to be ultra aggressive here. Ultra aggressive Titans are definitely going to want at least a 100 health stat. Not only do you benefit from orbs of power, you're probably also creating a lot of orbs of power. Well, a lot for PvP standards. And that's kind of where the line is drawn in my mind. You don't have to try to get those perfect armor rolls so that you can get higher grenade, you can get high super, you can get high health. Bungie has purposely made it so you cannot have your cake and eat it too. So the number one stat is weapons. The number two stat is probably grenade. And the reason that grenade is probably the number two stat is because you have a better shot at chucking a grenade, doing some tick damage, and firing from a distance and finishing off that enemy than you do firing from a distance, then rushing up on them and expecting them to be completely surprised that they're getting shot at and run around the corner and just attack them with your melee. They're going to be waiting for you. So your melee is not nearly as important as your grenade, which you can chuck from a safe distance. You can chuck into like a choke point, like say the B objective in Control, for example, or the flag in other objectives, Iron Banner, things like that. So as you're building, as you're trying to get better at PvP, set yourself up so that you can get better from a safe distance. And that's not to say that shooting from a safe distance is somehow cowardly, but you need to warm yourself up to the speed of PvP. It's not the same as PvE. It's not the same. So, I mean, regular PvP is not the same as Trials either. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to try this out in Trials, go to the PvP playlist in the portal first before you head to Trials. Do some Control, do some Eruption, do whatever. Even do Iron Banner. Warm yourself up. Be in that constant 1 or 2 spot and then head over to Trials before you just, because the people that play Trials, the people that sweat in Trials, they're some of the best. I might do okay one match and then I might get completely smashed the next match. That's going to be the life of Trials. So if you're already, not confident enough to really even dabble in PvP and you're looking at this video going, yeah, I'm really hoping that this video helps me get my Titan better. Take what I'm telling you, apply it to however you play, and then do 5, 10, 15, 20 runs through Control or Eruption or whatever. Or heck, even go to Comp. Even Comp is a little bit more forgiving than Trials is, per se. Weapons are going to come down to personal feel and certain perks. So I'm going to give you guys 3 options in the energy and in the kinetic slot, and I'll give you guys a couple of options here in the heavy slot. The goal is to try to get better at PvP, and these weapons will help you do so. So first up is going to be Giver's Blessing. Giver's Blessing is a great PvE weapon. It is also a great PvP weapon. With the 720 RPM, you're going to be dumping a lot of rounds in a very little amount of time. You can farm this in the Kepler loot cave. I have a video of that I will include in the end screen, or you can just head over to my channel and check it out yourself. Giver's Blessing, you can roll this with a lot of things. One of the rolls that I've had pretty decent luck with is Kinetic Tremors and Demolitionist. Both of these make sense in terms of the Crucible because, again, if I'm trying to spam my Shackle Grenade, and again, spamming Shackle Grenade is kind of a funny word because that's not really what you do. with anything in the Crucible. The only thing you're spamming is bullets. But anyways, off that soapbox. Kinetic Tremors is an interesting perk because, yes, you do have to dump quite a bit of the magazine into your target before it procs in PvP. However, once it does proc, again, you have a chance to gain some additional advantage on any Guardians that might be running up to try to help that enemy that you're mowing down currently. And Demolitionist is nice because getting your grenade back quicker, especially if you're using the Shackle Grenade, means you can get back to, getting some easy kills, maybe taking some objectives a little bit easier and those things. And so it's a nice perk to have in any PvP if the means allow. In other words, if there's not other perks available that you might be able to take advantage of. Ricochet rounds is also very nice if you can help it when you're using Giver's Blessing. And I prefer to use small bore. This thing with 92 recoil direction is an absolute laser beam. It's true that some of the more meta weapons, sometimes if they get a jump on me, I still won't be able to catch up with them. But there have been plenty of times where I've been going up against what they consider meta weapons, and Giver's Blessing beats them. Like straight up beats them. And it's not even a tier 5. So Giver's Blessing is one of the easiest weapons to get. Go farm the loot cave on Kepler and try to get a roll. Of course, you can go to Light GG and see all the possible perks available. But this roll for me has worked very, very well. And if you get, your recoil into the 90s, you get your stability above a 70, which I had to maximize my masterwork here to get that. Throw a counterbalance on. I mean, it's really strong. So just something to think about. Other weapons that will work very well in the Kinetic slot. Last Thursday is an excellent weapon. Anything that's got Head Seeker and Moving Target or Keep Away, those two options are going to be great options as far as pulse rifles go. But if you don't have a pulse rifle that has those, or you don't have the time to farm, you can pull out Outbreak Perfected, and this is still one of the top meta weapons being used all over PvP. Pretty much everyone's got Outbreak Perfected. If you don't, feel free to hop into my Discord and ask some people to, help you get the crafted version of Outbreak Perfected. People do occasionally ask that in my Discord, and I know some have gotten some pretty decent help. But Outbreak Perfected, if you don't have another good option, or you don't have time to farm, Outbreak Perfected is going to be very easy to get into. And I recommend once you get it craftable, put on Rewind, put on Flared Magwell, put on Fluted Barrel. That works for me pretty well. Longer distances, yeah, it's not as great, but Rewind is great because you pretty much don't have to stop firing. And you want some decent reload speed. So Flared Magwell makes quite a bit of sense here. One other weapon, and I'm just going to mention this now. I'm going to mention it in passing, that is very good in PvP. But if you don't catch it at the right time, you won't be able to get it. Lethal Abundance. Lethal Abundance is an absolute laser beam. It's a 360 RPM auto rifle. If you roll this thing with Keep Away, you see on this one I've got Target Lock. If you roll this thing with Enhanced Keep Away, you significantly increase your reload, your range, and your accuracy when there's no targets in a close proximity. You wouldn't pull this weapon out for close proximity battle anyways because you're outgunned simply just in rounds per minute. But playing how we are trying to play to try to get ourselves a little bit better at PvP, or maybe just a little bit more comfortable, Lethal Abundance, you can farm this thing from Lord Saladman when Iron Banner comes around. So if you did get some time to grab some of the old legacy weapons from Lord Saladman, Lethal Abundance is one that's worth dumping some cores into to see if you can get a pretty good roll. And even with a 38 stability, this one absolutely does go toe-to-toe with the Outbreak Perfected love that's out there in PvP right now. I don't care what anybody says. Lethal Abundance goes toe-to-toe with every weapon in PvP. So that's my little soapbox for that. In the energy slot, I have 3 very simple options that I think will work well for you. First up is Stars and Shadow. When you get a roll like this, Lone Wolf and Headseeker, keep it. If you can keep it on point, this thing absolutely shreds from any distance. Maybe not necessarily up close and personal, but if you're trying to pick off Guardians from a distance, I've literally two-tapped with this weapon, and it's pretty darn satisfying to watch. If you don't have a good Stars and Shadow, but you want something that's easy to obtain, I cannot recommend the BXR or the Jotun enough. The Jotun is going to make a lot of people laugh, but if you can finesse how you can get the charge shot off while aiming, while peeking around a corner, you'll get yourself some, I'd say you'll get yourself an average of 5 kills with this thing every Crucible match. At least in Control, certainly in Eruption, and definitely an Iron Banner. But you might get some hate mail. I'm not responsible for that. The BXR Battler, though, I can't say enough about this pulse rifle. This pulse rifle, even though this is probably considered a legacy item now, you get this from Dares of Eternity. Yes, Dares of Eternity. One of the easiest to play, low stress, 6-man activities that you can have. So the BXR, you can get this from Xur. You can craft this at in the Throne World, at the Enclave. You can roll this thing with a lot of different things, but I just want to roll on over here. There's very few weapons that are going to be able to ride this high in every stat category and still put out decent damage. The only drawback to this weapon is its impact is lower compared to some of the meta 450 pulse rifles. However, you can make up with this by getting a little bit creative. One of the things that I love about BXR is you can craft this with the elemental capacitor. You'll notice the third option down. If you have a Void Super, you increase your stability. Well, I'm already at 85 recoil direction, so how high could my stability get? Well, let me show you. Now your stability is at an 86, your range is at a 77, your recoil is at an 85, and oh, by the way, your handling and reload speed are lightning quick. So, and that is just, by the way, with the non-enhanced version of this perk. Enhanced version would put me over 90. So having a 90 stability, a 77 range, and a 450 pulse rifle from, I don't know, a football field away, you have got a shot to literally mow down everybody. And because of the faster firing rate that some of these slower firing weapons that are being used meta, I'm thinking hand cannons and some scout rifles, you have a legitimate shot to just clean house with the BXR by itself if you can roll it like this. So lest you think the BXR is dead, I assure you I have used this back to back with my Giver's Blessing in place of Stars and Shadow, and absolutely done very well with just running Givers and BXR. Two easier weapons to get. So don't think that if you're not on the game 24/7, you don't have time to grind, that you necessarily have to put maybe more than an hour. An hour on Kepler, an hour in Dares of Eternity, you should be able to get at least a decent roll. And then after a couple of days playing Dares of Eternity, you should be able to get all the patterns to just go craft in the Enclave if you don't have it craftable already. Last but not least is going to be the heavy slot. I highly recommend speccing into a rocket launcher. It's quick burst DPS. You're not really going to be able to take advantage of 900 RPM machine guns from a football field away. So the next best thing is having a rocket launcher. So if someone gets the jump on you, you chuck this thing out, boom, they're dead, one shot. And if you're using 2 legendary weapons in your energy and your kinetic slot, go ahead and throw on Gallahorn. It provides tracking and 2 rounds in the magazine. So win-win. So now I'm going to talk about armor. And one of the things that I didn't do in the Warlock video that I'm going to do in this is I'm going to give you a basic exotic setup to make it at least so you have, I don't want to use the word entry level because this exotic armor that I have selected, which we're going to go through in a second, isn't necessarily an entrance, type armor. It does have very good rapport with a lot of the seasoned PvP players out there. but it's easy enough to get. You can get this thing from Rahul, and you can put it on and start receiving instant benefit from. You don't need to really do anything to get it to proc. All you have to do is just, pretty much just play PvP. So let's go through it real quick. One-Eyed Mask is a staple in all entry level and even seasoned PvP player builds. One-Eyed Mask is very unique. Its main intrinsic vengeance, it highlights the target who dares to damage you, track down and destroy them for an overshield. All you have to do essentially to get this to proc is get in a gun battle one-on-one and move on with your life. It's that simple. So One-Eyed Mask is the perfect exotic armor to throw on. Hopefully you can get a decent roll. Okay. You can see I don't have any of these masterwork, by the way. Let's just get that cat right out of the bed. Let's just clear that elephant in the room right now. The unstable core farm is a real grind. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So if you know, you know. So One-Eyed Mask, that's my recommendation if you are looking for an exotic armor right off the back to get into PvP. You don't have to think about it. Put it on, forget about it, start farming your armors and your weapons and raising your power levels and stuff like that. And move on. For the rest of the armor, go ahead and spec into whatever general armor mod that you need. For the helmet, make sure you put on, if you're using a kinetic weapon, at least 2 kinetic targeting mods. In the third option, you can put on Radiant Light, which means when you cast your super, any nearby allies gain an armor charge. So if they are using armor fonts, they're going to thank you for that because they're going to get some of their abilities and or weapon stats boosted for that brief period of time. For the gauntlets, go ahead and put on at least 1 loader mod, if not 2. Sometimes what I'll do is if I'm running, let's just say solar, because that's what I have, I'll have 1 kinetic targeting, 1 solar targeting. But if you find yourself favoring one weapon over another, or maybe like with the solar weapons that I was talking about, you are firing from a safe distance, you might not need to have increased reload speed because you're kind of just peeking around from the distance anyways. So you're not really getting the full benefit of, I have to reload because there's literally another enemy 5 feet away. That might not be, your play. But for your Giver's Blessing, which does fire 720 rounds per minute, having the ability to reload it faster is going to be pretty darn beneficial. And I always like to put on Fastball because I can chuck my Shackle Grenade quite a bit further. For the chest armor, make sure you put on Unflinching Kinetic Arm. You'll notice that all of these mods have one thing in common. Literally none of them have anything to do with Orbs of Power, at least not yet anyways. That's because Orbs of Power are so few and far between it doesn't even matter. So put on Unflinching Kinetic Arm if you're using the Giver's Blessing or Outbreak. Reduce flinching from incoming fire while aiming a kinetic weapon. And then in the last spot, I just throw on a Harmonic Resist. There's really no point, but if by some chance someone chucks a Void Grenade at you, you do have a little bit of resistance. But again, things are just different in PvP than PvE. It's not really the same thing. For the legs, there's only 3 mods to put on, and that's the Enhanced Athletics. Move faster, base move speed increases, and your jump height. Finally, for the class item, I have on Reaper, Powerful Attraction, and Bomber. I do use my class ability quite often, so Reaper makes sense. I also use my class ability quite often, so Powerful Attraction makes sense. And then I use my grenade pretty often, so Bomber makes sense. But like I said, as you get used to playing in PvP, some of this is going to be feel. Like this works for me. But you might decide, hey, you know what? I only want one of those that you've got. I only want one of those. I want one of those. I don't need any of that. I want this, this, and this instead. That's fine. This is more of just a guide of how to kind of mold the character. And then once the mold is completed and you do some runs with the character, you can come back and revisit this and say, okay, am I really taking advantage of this? Do I feel like my reload is not fast enough? Okay, so maybe I don't need as many. Or maybe I'm not flinching as often as I, thought that I might. Or maybe I don't want to put a bomber on. I want to put something else on in place of it. All those things are going to be viable once you kind of get used to playing in PvP, you'll know kind of where you're lacking and what you could take advantage of. Okay, so we're going to go through the artifact pretty quickly. In the first column, anything that's got the overload does disrupt guardians briefly in PvP. So auto rifles are pretty good. Same thing with anti-barrier. Anti-barrier is good in PvP as well. You can deal with Titan shields a little bit better with the anti-barrier perk activated. So that's going to pair perfectly with the pulse rifle and or auto rifle. In the second column, you could put on flame fiber and freeze, get the mods if you want, but again, we're not really worried about orbs of power. So I recommend tightly woven. Again, depends on what weapons that you end up speccing into, but the ones that I use are tightly woven and light forged lead. Reason being is I get my grenade and collapsibility back a little bit faster when I have woven mail. And then, of course, light forged lead, kinetic weapons gain increased ammo generation. Collecting orb of power increases the benefit for a short duration. So don't really have that huge of a benefit in PvP, but I have these on because I do take advantage of at least the tightly woven. In the third column, Fever and Chill is viable. Elemental Benevolence is viable. I guess technically Reciprocal Draw is viable. Refresh Threads is viable. And Pack Tactics is viable as well. Same thing with Threadlink Proliferation. However, these are really only going to matter if you're creating Threadlinks to begin with strand weapons. In the fourth column, there's not many that I would consider to be necessary. Elemental Coalescence probably, Cauterized Darkness probably, maybe Threaded Blast. Shoulder to Shoulder is maybe worth it. One that is actually probably worth it a lot more than these other ones is Energy Acceleration with the micro missiles. However, if you don't have good rolls with any micro missile weapons, or you just don't have any, or you're not even sure what micro missile weapons are, number one, look it up because it's worth the research. And two, if you think that one of those weapons might benefit you in Crucible, it might be time to put on Energy Acceleration. In the final column, the only one that I would really spec into would probably be Radiant Shrapnel if you're using Solar, and Shield Crush. Elemental Overdrive, maybe. Tangled Web, maybe. Frigid Glare, probably not. Iron Lord's Vigor, probably not. And Argent Quiver, probably not. So you do get some benefit from the artifact in PvP, but again, it's not really the same thing as PvE, trust me. Okay, so there you have it. Easy ways to either prepare or improve your Titan for PvP play. There's a lot of stuff to digest. I'll make sure to have chapters in all of this. This is more for, hey, how can I set myself up to maybe not necessarily shoot to the mountaintop peak, but have more respectable runs inside PvP, so I'm not feeling like I'm struggling. I'm not feeling like I don't know how to build my character. This is the video for you. Anyways, if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Titan out there who's looking for a video to maybe slow things down for them and just kind of go through things step by step to help them build into a PvP, at least a loadout. Okay, my little loadout is right here, for example. Feel free to send this video to them or send them my way. My goal is to help as many people as possible. Anyways, this is my take on how I'm making my Titan for PvP. Hopefully it works for you. I'm going to switch over to some more gameplay, and then we'll call it a day. Alright, so I know that was kind of a long-winded video, but hopefully this helps somebody out there get their Titan ready to get into PvP. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. As you continue your journey into PvP, you're going to know different things that you're probably going to see that you might want to switch in or switch out from what I have in this video, including the exotic armor. Again, as your play style evolves, as you get used to the maps, as you get used to how the competition rolls, and you can see right there, I won that one-on-one gun battle with Outbreak, but that last bullet got me right in the face. But either way, you'll be able to spec into whatever abilities and things like that that you might need that might help you continue to grow in PvP and hopefully get better and ultimately more confident, and hopefully you can enjoy it a little bit better and get some of that loot. So if you guys did find anything helpful in the video, hopefully you can share this with other Titans in need. But otherwise, let me know in the comments what you think. I will see you guys next time. Take care.